All right, guys. Today we're talking about a VBT approach to the max effort method. So we're going to talk about making it safer, more precise, and possibly more effective. So let's dive in. Uses for velocity-based training. This is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about how we use it to make training safer, and then we're going to talk about how to make the max effort method more precise and, once again, possibly more effective. To make the max effort method safer with using VBT, here's what I mean by that is, instead of like really pushing to the point where you're going to fail, is knowing that, hey, I've already reached my minimum velocity threshold. And there's a couple ways to do it. Like, here's some research. You can see I cited at the bottom, but for bench, prone bench pull, all these different movements, lat pull down, squats, deadlift, and you will find that, for example, in the bench press, here are all the different studies that they looked at, but basically it come up with like 0.17 meters per second is where you're going to fail. Or you can do your own research, and like what I did is just pulled my own lifters and kind of got an average, also got some maximums and minimums as well, but come up with for my own athletes about 0.3 in the squat. Mainly, I'm sure that's because most of this is Olympic weightlifters, so they're not going to ever really get to the point where they can do a point. Over here you'll see that they said 0.3, but it got as low as 0.23, and with powerlifters it can get even lower. So you'll see 0.23 plus or minus 0.05, so that's 0.18. Some of them were getting in the squat. And I know Tank Lunsford, my guy, he can grind a squat at 0.17 or 1.6 even, but we're not, for the weightlifters and in general, we're going to try to stay away from 0.3 because that's where they're going to potentially miss. So the way that works is just like telling someone to do a particular movement. For example, like let's do a reverse band back squat, and you're going to keep it above 0.35 meters per second. So that's grinding, and that's getting very close, but yet not necessarily going to failure. And maybe once a week saying 0.3, meaning go all out. But then what that lets someone know, if I hit a back squat at 0.31 meters per second, I should probably stop there because I'm going to miss on the next one. So, and another thing, it doesn't mean that you're not going to hit PRs, especially like if you got some young up and coming athletes. It just means that you're not going to be missing every single week, because missing a back squat can take a toll on people, especially if you're talking about working with like weightlifters or athletic performance, like say football, basketball, soccer players. Do you really want to be like taking things to failure on a weekly basis? And then some people say, well, I'll just do a 3RM. But man, when you do a true 3-rep max, if you look at the total volume, this is me quoting Joe Ken, the volume is much higher, and the risk of injury, in my opinion, would be even higher, because what will happen is they'll get tired and they're going to fail, and then on that second or third, it's going to be very abrupt. Versus just doing a one. If you're going to do that, just do a 1RM. You're only talking about a 0.05% change. So, or I'm saying about a 5% change. So, because like most people can hit a 2 or 3 RM, somewhere between 93 and 95%. So, we're talking about 5% of say a 400-pound, squat. It's like 20 pounds. So, is that really going to be the difference in safe or not safe? I would say it seems like using velocity would be a much wiser way to do things if you're not wanting to miss. Even for powerlifters, I would say once every 4 weeks, really say go to the end, but keep things safe. Especially like if you look at like a guy like Ed Cohn, who for decades was on top and he never missed in training. So you don't have to go to complete failure. You want to get there and you want to know that things are improving, but you don't have to go till you fail. Anyway, if you want to make the max effort method more precise, you say, what is my goal? What is my sport? Who's the athlete? And what is my goal? So for a powerlifter, yes, absolute strength, that's the goal. We've already talked about it, go all out. However, a weightlifter, the primary concern is power at a very high velocity or high rate, and it's skill development. Same thing with athletes outside of any strength sports. It'll depend on the position and the sport and the exact athlete. So meaning, if you're going to do, say, a rugby scrum, or you're going to have a collision at the line of scrimmage in football, that's going to happen at 0.75 or average 0.75 meters per second. And a wide receiver accelerating off the line, it's going to happen at 0.09 meters per second. This is all Brian Mann's. I heard that in one of his talks and read it in one of his papers. Throwing out these numbers and looking at the research, they're pretty darn close. So it would make sense, instead of me trying to get really good at doing a 1RM back squat at, say, 0.18 meters per second, like what value is that? But if I got really good at producing force around 0.75 meters per second, that's going to relate much more to sports. And over here you'll see like Ryan Grimsland, at about he peaked his ability to produce power somewhere around 0.8 meters per second, 0.83. That's going to be right around that 60 percentile, and that based on the research, actually in a talk that I gave with Brian Mann at Swiss, it was his research that stated that somewhere around, if you can peak or make sure that your maximum power is happening right around that 60 percentile in the back squat, that's going to be ability, that power is going to be relatable to sports performance. Because remember, power is force times velocity. So if your power is being created where it's swaying more towards the force, that means that it's taking longer to create that force. Then that means that probably is not going to relate, since the force production is going to happen at such a higher rate on a field. So just making sure that you're actually hitting your goals, whether it's weightlifting, powerlifting. Once again, powerlifting, go back to the prior slide and you'll see what I would say about that. And possibly more effective, meaning this, is that you can use velocity to do daily readiness. I know in one of the Burley Hawks articles for Westside Barbell, he talks about, that sometimes they will skew the way that they do their max effort method based on the daily readiness. So someone's coming in, they're feeling crushed, then they might sway it, they're not going to go as hard. But here's the thing, is that feelings are such a subjective or such an objective way of looking at things versus let's test it. So looking at a counter movement jump, looking at a concentric only jump, maybe doing the first movement of the day and see if all of a sudden that velocity is somewhere between 0 to 5%. So it's maybe 4% slower than normal, no problem. Business as usual. That's common fatigue that you're going to have to experience to get adaptation. However, when it's 5 to 10% slower than normal, maybe consider dropping volume and intensity 10 to 20%. If it's 10% or more, I would scrap the whole thing. There's no point in doing a max effort method or a max effort workout if you're that fatigued. If it's greater than 10%, maybe you just go to get a light pump, get the blood flowing, get that acute hormonal response, go home and recover and live to fight another day. So what it's going to help you do is avoid overtraining. It's going to reduce that risk of injury. It's going to limit subjectivity. Like I said, what does it feels / actually mean? So it feels bad, it feels great. What does that mean? It's subjective. So I'm going to give my shout out to Dr. Lawrence Gray of Gray Chiropractic and Sports Associates, teaching me this very concept years ago, and it made total sense to me. So feeling strong or weak, it actually could be a lie. Conclusion: Louie Simmons created the Conjugate System, the dynamic effort method, the max effort method, and the repetition method. Velocity-based training simply allows for more precision, better intent, a safer approach, and the maximizing of each method. If you guys have any questions, email me, travis@gymaware.com, and I'll try to get to any of those questions. If you have any subjects you'd like me to cover in the future, do say that as well. And before I leave, I just want you to see, here are some of the references I used to come up with my conclusions. Thank you.